Thank you all for coming. This is definitely the biggest crowd I had to come to any of these readings. So you're going to see a somewhat different version of this talk than I usually do, which is usually a lot of footage, but this is mostly me talking, so sorry. I kind of balanced this. So for the last few weeks since the book's come out, I've been doing a lot of interviews about the book. So I tried to tailor the presentation to what people have been asking me about the book. So hopefully I'll answer some of your questions. So one of the things people always ask me is why André? Why André? What was why did you do a book about André? And I was always a lifelong pro wrestling fan. But I was never like a huge André fan. Like I didn't have a million André posters everywhere or whatever. But in the early 2000s, I saw a movie called André the Giant, Larger Than Life, which was an A&E biography. And it told the story that you don't see on TV. Like, all we ever saw on TV was André, in the wrestling ring. They wouldn't even tell stories about stuff that happened before wrestling was on TV. He had this long, distinguished career. And in this biography, this A&E biography, they revealed a lot of stuff that I had never known before. I didn't really understand. I knew he had, some sort of condition that made him a giant, but I didn't really understand what he went through. And you heard kind of like these stories about him flipping over a car and things like that. But it wasn't until I saw this in the 2000s, early 2000s, that I had this understanding that there was more to André's story than we were presented on TV. Probably the story people ask me about the most, which is the story that opens the book, is how André got a ride to school from a famous playwright and author named Samuel Beckett. This was in a small town called Moulins, France, right outside of Paris. And his father, André's father, was Bulgarian, and he did some construction work, possibly built his house, but did some work for Samuel Beckett, and got to talking to him and told him that his son André was too big to fit in the school bus. And Samuel Beckett, who was a guy who thought that education was important, and he took it upon himself to give André a ride to school. This quote by Beckett, I thought, also kind of related to the work in a way. It says, "To find a form that accommodates the mess, that is the task of the artist now." And one of the things people ask me, they ask me, why André? The second question is, why comics? Usually, I don't usually get that from other cartoonists though, because they get it. they understand that it's like a compulsion that you have you have to do it, And this quote is good. It's like, to find a form that accommodates the mess. I felt like before I got into comics, I was like, I had all these artistic notions and I wanted to write and tell stories, but comics was just the medium that I found that allowed me to tell stories. So why comics? Because it's the form that accommodates the mess for me. So how did I get started doing this book about André? Where did it come from? Okay, so the first thing I did was I read that story about Samuel Beckett, and I thought it would make a cool mini comic, which for the uninitiated is kind of like a demo tape of what a comic can be. Although pretty much, plenty of comics, that's the final form. There's no, it's not a demo for anything special later, but in this case it ended up being that. So I did this comic it was originally called Roussimoff, which is André's actual last name. The one on the left had about 20 pages, and it was the Samuel Beckett story. And I just made this little mini comic and sold it at a convention. I printed maybe 50 maximum, and then they sold out. So some people have that somewhere. And then this was the second issue that came out maybe a month or two later. It's very different from the way I ended up drawing him in the book. Most notably, his nose is much different, more of a triangle in the book. But so the book started out as these two little mini comics, and things developed from there. So another thing people ask me a lot about André, and one of the things that they know about André, besides the fact that he was a wrestler, was that he was a big drinker. Everybody's heard the stories about him drinking 116 beers and all this. And this is a picture of his hand holding a 12-ounce beer can. It's not a mini can or anything. That's a regular-sized beer can. This was in Sports Illustrated in 1982. So if you could imagine in 1982 Sports Illustrated covering a professional wrestler as an athlete, it's much different. It was really weird for the time, and it was different than if you could imagine seeing a wrestler on Sports Illustrated today. Very weird. Would not happen. But this was a different time. So they talk about how much he drank and stuff, and it's always like this kind of hilarious thing. He drank 116 beers, then he had wine with dinner and all this. But I really feel that André drank a lot like that. I mean, pro wrestling is a fraternal organization. You're always on the road. Drinking is a big part of it. But I think that André drank a lot also to dull the pain that he felt, his physical pain. And I also feel that he was really a lonely person. And this was like the only thing that he had to cope. It was like a form of self-medication. And if you can imagine the idea that you are in a lot of pain, you're unable to fit in with the rest of the world, you drink, and if you get drunk, it makes that pain go away. But the ultimate kind of like screw you by God is that you have to drink like 10 times the amount that a normal person would have to drink to feel that buzz. So like even the self-medication is a chore for him. So these are 2 pages that were in the book that ended up getting pulled out, but it speaks to that a little bit. So this is Killer Kowalski, something that he said about André. He said, "I remember the quantity he used to drink. He used to drink to numb himself from the reality that he wouldn't live long in this world." And I think that's true. He died at 46. When I was writing, the book I did before this was called Everything Dies, which is basically me working out my own fear of death through comics. So when I was working on André right after that, and he knew he was going to die young, and he in fact did die young. And I'm sitting here looking at hopefully a full lifespan, and I'm in fear of death. I can imagine what André's life was like, knowing that he had a death sentence ahead of him. This is Classy Freddie Blassie, who said, "I'd always sensed that André stayed out so late because he was afraid he would die in his sleep." And that speaks a lot to that understanding of his own mortality that he had. So the next thing people ask about is WrestleMania 3, which was the biggest event he was associated with, and we're going to kind of go through WrestleMania 3 from the perspective of the book. Here's 2 major characters, André on the left, and this guy, Bobby the Brain Heenan, who I personally feel is one of the best, probably, I would say close to the best pro wrestling personality that there is. And he was André's manager. Okay, so in pro wrestling, there are good guys and bad guys. André was always a good guy for almost his whole career. And then he left to film Princess Bride, and he had back surgery. And they wanted to bring him back to go against Hulk Hogan. You guys all know Hulk Hogan. He was a pop culture icon and the biggest good guy in wrestling. So to have a match with André, they had to make one of the guys a bad guy. But what do you do to make André a bad guy, someone who was beloved for 20 years in the pro wrestling business? You put him with Bobby the Brain Heenan, the most hated manager in all of wrestling. Okay, so what they did was they had these little skits called Piper's Pit, right? Where Roddy Piper would invite people into this little stage he had set up that was supposed to look like his house or something, and he would interview people, right? And at one point they gave André a trophy for being undefeated for 15 years, and Hulk Hogan came out and kind of like started talking about how great André was, and then André walked out. It was this weird, he stole his thunder a little bit. And then they gave Hogan a trophy for being the champion for 3 years, and his trophy was bigger than André's, which was very offensive. But finally what they did was they brought André out with Bobby the Brain Heenan, and that was basically all they needed. Bobby was so hated. If you were with Bobby, they would hate you. But Bobby gives this speech, which I thought was so great, and I'm going to act it out for you. But the reason I'm acting it out is because I want to make a point. Wrestling at this time was mostly improv. So when a guy would come out like Bobby the Brain Heenan and cut a promo that was supposed to set up this big match where they were going to be they wanted to sell 80,000, 90,000 tickets at, but they wouldn't use a script. Now if you're watching the show, everything's really scripted. This is really like, especially something like this that was like leading into a big event, they would script it out to make sure the wording was exactly right. But in this case, Bobby is just making it up as he goes along, and try to figure out which part he's making up, and it's like really obvious. This is kind of funny because I'm reading from a script now, but if you can imagine that Bobby is just making this up, okay? So here's Hogan and Bobby the Brain Heenan. Hogan says to André, "What are you doing here with Heenan?" And Heenan says, "I'll tell you what he's doing here. He is sick and tired of you and what you stand for. Let me tell you something, Hogan. You're the one for 3 years as world's champion. Use this man. You're also the vermin that made this man. I can't tell you what I think about it." That's where he kind of just like he didn't even know what he was saying, and he went out there. They gave him a trophy, but that wasn't good enough. It was a littler trophy than yours. But you had to walk out and steal that moment. You're so jealous of this man, you can't stand it. Hulk, this is the man for 15 years that was undefeated. But did you ever once offer him a title shot? And Hogan is beside himself at this moment. He is just blown away by what he's seeing and everything, and he says, "No, man, you're wrong! You're wrong! You're wrong! When I won the world title, he poured champagne over my head. It was like a bond of friendship. You're wrong!" And Heenan goes, "Did you ever once offer him a title shot? You laughed behind his back." And then Hogan puts his hand on André's shoulder, and André says, "Take your hands off my shoulders." And then right after he said that, Heenan says, "If you don't believe that, believe this." And he rips his shirt off, rips Hogan's shirt off, tears it off his chest, and rips his crucifix off and throws it on the ground. And that was it. That was all they needed. After that moment, 93,000 fans sold out. And so they really sold, they say that there was 20,000 comps. But I don't care. Getting 93,000 people into any place is a big deal. So that was a huge thing. It broke the indoor attendance record, and as far as pro wrestling goes, it's actually probably the most well-known thing that André ever did, which is kind of ironic because he actually loses the whole time. You know, he loses at this. But we're going to go through the match a little bit, and I want to try to help people understand what pro wrestling is all about, because I think it's so hard to really get it just from looking at it. Are they fighting? Are they fake fighting? Are they, like, do they all make the whole thing up before they go out there? Like, what's it all about? So I kind of go through WrestleMania 3 a little bit, and see what it's all about. So the match opens up. André and Hogan are in the ring, and they're just staring at each other, right? And this is like, the crowd is quiet. If you can imagine 93,000 people, they're quiet, they're watching this, and the announcers are really letting us know that the tension is building between Hogan and André. And it's just a stare down. no expression on Andre's face, and Hogan right here is just starts like going ape shit, or sorry, he starts going wild in the ring, and he's just like screaming like he maybe is talking trash, you don't know, and the next thing you know, Andre pushes him, and then the crowd goes crazy when they finally hit each other. Now, if you can imagine, okay, Andre and Hogan here are putting on a spectacle. The whole thing has been built around this. But meanwhile, Andre is not in really good shape, and they can only go as long as Andre can go, basically. So it only lasted about 12 minutes, the actual match, which is really short for a main event at WrestleMania like that. But even though it was very short and Andre was in a lot of pain, I think that he was aware that this was kind of the last time he was going to be able to perform at this high a level in front of this many people. And that was a big, important thing for him. If you can imagine what happiness is happiness when you are on the beach, relaxing, no worries, no cares in the world? Is that when you're at your happiest? Or are you at your happiest when you are doing the thing that you've worked really hard at and enjoy doing and practicing your skill at the highest level? I actually read an article one time about football quarterbacks and how they've like done studies on their brains, and they're actually the part of the brain that produces happiness or whatever is most excited when they are on the field during a game, not when they're on the beach and relaxing. So I think of this as Andre's happiest and finest moment, and then one of the last times he was able to really do this. So he really, as much as he could, he's going for it out there. He does this move where he walks across. He really, like, this is called working stiff in pro wrestling, where he really was laying it into Hogan, and like he steps on his back for like 3 seconds, but he weighs 500 pounds and he stands on Hulk Hogan's back for 3 seconds. This other part where he has to pick Hogan up by his, this is a guy with a hurt back, and Hogan weighs 300 pounds. And he just picks him up with one hand, like by his tights. And you could see Hogan's arms and legs hanging there, and he wasn't helping him. But the best part, he throws Hulk Hogan into the corner, and if you look very, very closely, he winks into the camera. And so he throws him right in, and then he winks, and that's him winking right into the camera, which is amazing the first time I saw it. I've seen this match 100 times. I never noticed that he winks directly in the camera, which was a huge no-no at the time. I mean, you know, you wouldn't look at the camera. You know, you wouldn't acknowledge anything like that. This is like saying "Hi, Mom" in the middle of a play or something like that, you know. But this was like just an example of how he felt like he was in his glory, I think. Okay, so the biggest moment of the match, of course, is when Hulk Hogan finally body slams André the Giant, which Hogan says he tore his pectoral muscle or something lifting him up there. But I think that's actually not true. Because if you watch the match, and Andre would know this better than anybody, that when your opponent is body slamming you, you help him and you jump as much as you can and lift your feet up like that. You can see it in the match. Like, he's clearly doing something like that. But anyway, he loses. Hulk Hogan is the victor, and the whole crowd goes crazy. But after the loss, Andre is leaving the ring, and he's still just like in his character screaming, and there's people throwing garbage at him, which is like not a thing that normally happens at a wrestling show. Just like at this one, it was just, that's how crazy it was. Everyone threw garbage at him. And he was riding back to the ring on these motorized carts, which all the wrestlers came out in these motorized carts, and at the time you're watching, I remember like when it came out, we were like, what is the deal with this motorized cart thing? But really what it was is that the event was in such a big venue that they thought that Andre wasn't able to walk to the ring. It was too far for him to walk. So they built these little rings with little carts and made everybody come down in them. But it was really just for Andre's sake. which no one ever knew. It was just like they did this cart thing for WrestleMania 3, and no one knew why. It was just part of the spectacle, but really it was to protect Andre. Oh, so the last thing, I just wanted to go through one more thing after WrestleMania 3, which is such a huge part of Andre's career. The final thing people ask me all the time about, of course, is Princess Bride. And Mandy Patinkin gave us a blurb for the book, which was amazing. And so I think this little story about André and Mandy Patinkin during the filming of Princess Bride really tells us all we need to know about what it was like to be André the Giant. And he says, Mandy Patinkin says, "André, have you enjoyed your time making the film?" And André says, "Oh yes, very much." And Mandy says, "Even when we're just sitting here? Even these long hours?" And André says, "Yeah, here, no one looks at me here." And if you can imagine being a celebrity, a John Hamm, let's say. When John Hamm goes to a restaurant, he puts on a baseball hat and glasses and somewhat blends in. Although I saw him at a restaurant one time and I said, "Hey, look, there's John Hamm," and he walked out and left. Yeah. But anyway, if you ever see, if you could imagine a celebrity being able to do that, even Lady Gaga or whatever, these huge recognizable celebrities can blend in a little bit if they wanted to. André, from the age of like 17, 18 years old, before he was world famous, he was the most famous guy in his town because he was huge. And he never was able to go anywhere without people staring at him, looking at him, what's wrong with that guy, mom, stuff like that. And, literally he had trouble fitting in the world. But also, I feel like that he internalized that. And he felt disconnected from people. And he felt he was unable to be a human and connect with other humans in the way that we could. So him being on this film set and everybody just saw him like it was nothing every day was great for him. It was a wonderful experience. And I think he was really proud of the film. Terry Funk tells a story about how André would make all the guys watch it over and over again. From start to finish. It was over, he'd restart it. On the bus, if you can imagine driving 10 hours, you can probably watch Princess Bride 5 times. But no one ever said no to André because he was the boss. And I think this sums it up, is that André was just a guy whose life was set in extraordinary circumstances. And he made the most of his life, with what he could. But the thing that made him so famous was also the thing that killed him and separated him from the rest of the world. That's my presentation. So the question was, what did he do before wrestling, and how did he get into it? He actually started wrestling really, really young in life, like 18. He worked as a mover before that. And once he moved to Paris at like 18 and started working as a mover, and pretty quickly they were like, "You got to go to the wrestling match they would run in Paris." He went down there and they were like, "Of course." You see a guy that's 7 foot 4 inches tall and 400 pounds or whatever. Yeah, you can be a wrestler, buddy. And it was just right after that, he was pretty famous right away. They brought him to Quebec, North America, Japan, started steamrolling right after that. Yes?
Did you have to talk to anybody at the WWF or anybody in Andre's family, or?
I didn't have to talk to them. I would have liked to, though. To be honest, you mean legally speaking?
Both. Did you?
Yeah.
Did you have to?
My publisher was basically, don't worry about anything legally, and I'm not a lawyer, and I just wanted to tell the story, so I'll take their word for it. I would have loved to talk to more people in his family. I believe he still has a brother. His father's gone. I don't know if his mother's still alive. I couldn't get in touch with them. I did talk to a few people. I talked to Blackjack Mulligan. who got into a fist fight with André the Giant once. And I spoke to Bill Eadie, who was a pro wrestler who knew André and worked with André as in the WWF. He was Bill Eadie was known as Axe from the tag team Demolition, and he's a really sweet, genuine guy who's also now a special ed teacher. And he had a lot of great things to say about André, and if you can imagine, I talked to two known pro wrestlers, Blackjack Mulligan and Bill Eadie. Bill Eadie couldn't be anything more different from his character, who wore face paint and wore spikes on his shoulders and all this. Totally sweet guy. And Blackjack Mulligan couldn't be more exactly like his character, except for more offensive in a way. So yeah, that was interesting talking to all these people. I've talked to a few people since the book has come out, but yeah, they were pretty closed off. It's hard to get in touch with people. I tried to get in touch with his daughter, but it was hard to find her. I sent letters out to people that I thought maybe they could be the person I'm looking for, but I never heard back. I called his surgeon, who actually works in Boston, that did the surgery on his knee, I think. No, his back surgery. I called him a number of times, but he must be super busy. Didn't get in touch with him either. So yeah, no, not too much involvement with the WWE. Although right when the book was coming out, they did the André the Giant Battle Royal, which I think was a subtle, okay, we'll promote your book in a subtle way. Yeah.
So those two pages, why'd you have to pull those 2 pages?
I just didn't think they fit in. They were just, in the original version of the book, I wanted to have a lot of these little quote pages where it was just a single quote by a single guy. And it just kind of didn't fit in the way the book was coming. They were really from an earlier version of the book. Yes?
Given your experience and research, what are your impressions of what it's like for wrestlers as a way of life and a way to make a living?
It is not easy. And it seems like one of these things that is kind of glamorous and, you know, you're famous. But, you know, it's, there's a lot of, they're on the road all the time. And there's a lot of issues that come up with, like, musicians that are on the road all the time and comedians that are on the road all the time. You know, a lot of them fall to alcoholism, depression, things like that. And it's not uncommon for that to happen to wrestlers. You know, especially back then, it was a lot of driving and working every day, 7 days a week and all this stuff. So it's something that you really have to have like a strong passion for it and really not getting into it for the money. Now, there are certain people, of course, that just get pulled into it because they, you know, hey, you're a huge guy, you'd be a good wrestler, here's a lot of money. And then they come in. But the best guys are the ones that really work at their craft. And yeah, it's a lot different now. I think if you're working in the WWE now, it's a little bit easier, and they are more concerned with the lives of the people that they're employing, because there's people. There was, you know, all those guys a lot of those guys in the '80s that were on steroids and coke and partying and all that stuff. They're all dead now, or very injured and all this stuff. So it's much different now, but it's still pretty cutthroat situation.
What did you find that the graphic storytelling form provided for this story that you could do that other people who looked at André the Giant couldn't do?
Well, I think that one of the things I tried to do in the storytelling is, and is one of the things you can do with comics, is it's hard. One of the things about André that makes him so spectacular is the fact that he was just huge. He was like 2 people or 3 people, and I was able to tell that graphically, you know, and my drawing style is not super realistic, but I know that if I put André somewhere and put a bunch of people next to him that are all small, you know, he'll just be huge. So a lot of the things I was doing is just I wanted to make him the biggest thing on the page and the biggest thing on the panel. So if you could imagine here and then here, I always tried to make André even bigger than even more exaggerated than you'd originally would think, because he actually was that much bigger. I mean, it's hard to tell because when you see him on TV or in the wrestling ring, he's next to Hulk Hogan. And he makes him look pretty small, but Hulk Hogan's almost 7 feet tall anyway. So when you see him, I saw this video one time of him getting out of a Jeep, like a Jeep Wrangler. And you know what a Jeep Wrangler looks like, and then you just kind of see his hand come out from the side, and it takes up like the whole door. And I think that was, so that was important. I knew that you had to compare him to other things around to really get this feeling of how big of a guy he was. I don't know if you could get that with just writing about it.
Wait, is your name really Box Brown?
Box is a nickname I got in college, and it has since become my professional pseudonym.
Why Box?
It was just, it's stupid. They said a bunch of kids I went to college with said I looked like a shoebox, and then here we are. Yes.
How many times did you watch The Princess Bride for research purposes?
Oh, I didn't really, maybe like once, but I watched I had already seen it like 50 times, I mean. But I got a lot of stuff from there was like a featurette on the DVD where they interviewed the actors and stuff like that. So a lot of that ended up in the book. Yeah, I could probably recite Princess Bride now. Yes.
Did you expect all the positive press reaction you got?
Oh.
And what do you think it is about André, about the comic that?
I don't know. I didn't expect that at all. I have not expected what has happened since the book came out. I mean, I did not expect to be in the Sunday New York Times sports section, I'll tell you that much. Ever in my life. I mean, if you told my old gym teachers the kid that finished last in the mile was going to be in the Sunday sports section, the sports section about wrestling, it doesn't even make sense. But so yeah, I mean, we got, and then I got to do an interview with The World, which is an NPR radio show, which was really cool. And me and my wife went down and got to see the WHYY studios and all this stuff. And yeah, I mean, I just wanted to do this because I thought it was fascinating, and I thought it was an amazing story. And I did not think that people, I knew that André was well liked, but I didn't realize the magnitude at all. And the fact that there's never been a real André the Giant biography, I think, helped. People keep asking me, who's the next wrestler biography going to be? And who could ever be after André? I don't think anybody. So I don't know. I'm super pleased that people are interested in the book and overwhelmed really by the responses from people. Not expecting this much from my wrestling book with those mini comics I started making a couple years ago. Yes.
I'm not so familiar with your other work. Like, have you done other topics like this?
I've done my series Everything Dies, which is available just digitally. It was never really published except for mini comics. Was a nonfiction work that was about 500 pages on different religions, which at the time people were like, "What religions on comics?" Like, what? But it's always this thing where you have to kind of, when you make comics, when people ask you, so what do you do? Well, I make comics. The first thing they think of is, I don't know, what, Beetle Bailey or something, or Wolverine. And I don't make comics anything like that, So I think for a while there was this thing where you had to explain, listen, I make nonfiction comics for literate people, adults that aren't children and all this stuff. But thankfully, I think that in the last 5-10 years, things have changed a lot. And now, believe it or not, a comic is in a bookstore, But yeah, and then, because I kind of finished André about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. So since then, I've been working on a lot of fiction comics, But I skew probably for adults, I'd say. There's nothing too pornographic in them or anything, but I don't know. I would say 15 or older. Yeah.
Did you go into the Shepherd Fairy sticker, or
No,
how you felt about that?
I didn't talk about the Shepherd Fairy sticker because it happened after Andre died, and also really kind of had nothing to do with him. A story as I know it, Shepherd and his friends called themselves a posse, and one day they were hanging out, and there's a picture of Andre in the newspaper, and he just like cut it out and made it into a little stencil and said Andre has a posse, and then started making stickers, which is cool, which is awesome, and it became like this viral thing. I remember like being like 12, 13 years old in like the early 90s and riding down the Garden State Parkway with my mom and seeing an Andre sticker like stuck to the toll booth and being like, "Whoa, Mom, stop, there's wrestling." And then, but like nothing, it didn't relate to anything with wrestling, and so I didn't really talk about it in the book because it was, I like the idea now that there's this Andre face that you see all over the place, and I like that people are like, oh, that's kind of make that connection, that's Andre, I think it has helped keep his name alive. But no, I didn't talk about it in the book. Yeah?
Going back to what you were saying about the best wrestlers, the ones dedicated to their craft.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a really awesome blog post that you did about 18 tips for cartoonists.
Okay.
And the number one that you wrote was work hard.
Hmm.
And I see a lot of cartoonists here from the local Boston that come out to see you today. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your work ethic and what your daily routine is like. How you make comics.
Yeah, I do believe in the whole work hard and publish as much stuff as you can. I like to draw something every day. I try to draw a comic every day, at least one page, something. The past few weeks I've been kind of busy doing this tour and other stuff and freelance illustration and stuff like that. So I've kind of gotten behind, and it felt really weird. For like 3 weeks I hadn't drawn a comic page, and I was like jonesing pretty hard. And but I restarted a few days ago, but it's kind of hard to get back into the routine of it. But there was a period of time where I was making 3 pages of comics a day, and which was like a 12-hour day. Now I have a lot of like. Did you guys see my eyes rolling all the way back there? I have a lot of other work that pops up, administrative stuff. I started a publishing company. I deal with so many email. I deal with I have to spend every day till noon dealing with emails now at this point, which is, I shouldn't be complaining because I guess this is like what happens when people are interested in your stuff, but it takes away from the comic drawing part of the day. But I try to get in there, get into the studio when I get up in the morning and put in a 12-hour day every day. Someone asked me, for illustrators trying to get into comics, is this something you can make a living at, or is this just secondary type of work? And I thought to myself, and I answered, if you could do anything else, do that. Because for the efficiency of how many drawings you have to do to make a book compared to, like, if I made prints and t-shirts and stuff, every single one of these pages would be a t-shirt or a print. Instead, it's just one thing, and it took just as long. You know what I mean? You could monetize your work way more efficiently than through comics. So if you want to get into comics, don't even do it unless you have a sick kind of like compulsion that you can't not do it, because it's just not inefficient way to work or do anything. But I guess I have that compulsion, and I've tried a lot to write novels and write poetry and all kinds of different arts, but comics, for whatever reason, is the one that I feel the most comfortable with, and I just feel I can express whatever it is inside of me that way, and I can't do it any other way. So that's my advice for aspiring cartoonists. And I didn't go to art school or anything, and I can draw well enough to make people think that I know how to draw. So that you don't need art school either if you can't get to it or afford it or whatever.
Well, since you kind of threw out there that people were kind of asking you if you were going to go ahead and do another wrestler book, I was thinking, it just made me think that one option you might explore is to go in the opposite direction and do a book about one of the great bums or jobbers of all time.
Sure, sure.
And it's actually Massachusetts is home to Pete Doherty, the Duke of Dorchester.
Okay.
And I just thought I'd throw that out there. That would be.
Yeah, I mean that would be interesting. I kind of have an idea to do a book about just wrestling in general and just kind of weird wrestling stories and kind of have each chapter be about something different. I heard a great jobber story recently. Iron Mike Sharp, who was a somewhat famous jobber. He used to wear this leather wrist guard that was like on his forearm. And someone told me recently that that wrist guard that he wore was made out of one of Andre's cowboy boots. Yeah, he like cut it up to pieces and made it into this arm guard, and that's what he wore to the ring.
Wait, so you said you have like a little publishing thing now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do like lots of people like contact you and try to make like deals and stuff? Like,
Yeah,
how does that work?
yeah, that's part. I mean, I try to with Retrofit Comics kind of. I kind of just contact people that I'm interested in publishing, but people do send me stuff pretty frequently, and so a lot of that is responding to people. And I always try to be super encouraging because, hey, I could be totally wrong. If someone sends me something and I don't think it's right for me, I could be totally wrong, and I encourage those people that send me stuff to really prove me wrong. And that's what I try to do when I send out something and the publisher doesn't like it.
Has your company thingy ever like so far like published like the books, you know, the things that other people like, you know, send to be hopefully published?
Yeah, we've published works by at least 20 artists probably. Yeah, it's been a long. Publishing has been really great. I feel like it has been improving my own work, just to work with other artists and stuff, and to see how other people work and how they go about making comics. Oh.
Yeah, I noticed the back cover of this one and the cover of one of your mini comics was showing André in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious if like you felt like that period of André's life was really, I don't know, significant.
Well, the thing that's was really significant about Japan, and I go into it in the book, is that he was concurrently famous in the U.S. and Japan. So what that involved in is a lot of flights. For a guy who needed 2 first-class seats and couldn't fit in a bathroom, an 18-hour flight to Japan was a huge deal, and back. And there was a period of time, I believe, in, I want to say the early 80s, where he went to Japan 3 times in one summer. And I think that type of traveling was more than he needed to do, really. I feel like the amount of time he spent working is indicative of how much he didn't want to be alone or by himself. And it was great. It was cool in Japan. It was really cool how he was so big and so different in Japan, and seeing that, how he was promoted in Japan versus how he was promoted in the U.S. And there's these, they're hard to find, but there's pro wrestling manga from Japan that has André and Hulk Hogan in it. It's really cool. But yeah, Japan was huge for him. It's huge, huge, huge. Half of his career.